rapid emergence of resistant bacteria is occurring worldwide, and it is a major problem. According to the BBC, by 2050, 10 million people will have died from drug-resistant infections, more than currently die from cancer. So what is antibiotic resistance?
This person has a bacterial infection. The bacteria will carry on growing if his immune system can't get rid of it. Taking an antibiotic will kill any bacteria that are vulnerable to it. However, some of the bacteria are resistant as they have genes that protect them from the drug's attack. The resistant bacteria now have space to survive and carry on growing. This can progress to a serious bacterial infection that is resistant to medicine in hospitals. This is becoming an increasing problem, for example, the MRSA crisis.
We interviewed a general practitioner to see the problem from the perspective of the NHS.
So as a GP, antibiotic resistance is a big issue for me. A typical example is in our area there's a lot of urinary tract infections that are resistant to trimethoprim, and if you give trimethoprim and somebody has a UTI that's resistant to it, they can go into urosepsis, have an acute kidney injury and be admitted to hospital, which then has a massive economic effect for the NHS. So RCCG now is auditing our prescribing of antibiotics for urinary tract infections, and as part of my contract we have to reduce the prescriptions of trimethoprim and prescribe nitrofurantoin first line for urinary tract infections. We undergo an annual audit and we have to reach the CCG target or below as part of our contract. As a GP, most of my consultation time is actually in education, trying to explain the difference between viral and bacterial infections and why it's not appropriate to have antibiotics for viruses. So it would be much easier for me to say, all right, here's prescription for antibiotic. That takes me 1 minute. It takes me 10 minutes of my consultation time to educate patients, and I feel very strongly about this. Right, I qualified as a doctor in 1990, so I've been a doctor for 28 years, and in my professional life I have seen such an increase in antibiotic resistance. I actually find it quite alarming, so I feel very strongly about not giving inappropriate prescriptions for antibiotics. So the ways I try to reduce antibiotic prescribing is obviously, the first big one is education, but I'm a big believer in doing lots of cultures. I do swabs of throats, any skin infections, obviously dipping urine for urinary tract infections, and that actually gives you a few days to try to let the patient know they don't actually need antibiotics. If the swab comes back positive, then you then have the sensitivities and you can prescribe the most appropriate antibiotic that is not resistant.
In order to combat the crisis, scientists are developing new ways of treating bacterial infections.
When a type of virus called a bacteriophage infects a bacterium, it binds to the cell surface and injects its DNA. The DNA of one viral sequence and one repeat region are copied onto a single-stranded RNA molecule. When made synthetically, this is called a guide RNA. The repeated region forms a hairpin loop and binds to the Cas9 protein. If a section of virus DNA matches the guide RNA, the virus DNA unwinds and binds to it. Cas9 then changes shape and snips both strands, killing the virus. Scientists have found a way to modify the CRISPR sequence so that the spaces contain bacterial DNA, like antibiotic resistance genes and disease genes. By doing this and inserting the modified CRISPR back into the bacteria, the system recognizes it and attacks its own DNA. This makes the bacteria susceptible to antibiotics and they are killed or can no longer cause disease.
Bacteriocins are another potential alternative to traditional antibiotics.
Bacteriocins are proteinaceous compounds produced by bacteria that have bactericidal action against closely related species. They are currently used in the treatment of vegetables and fresh meat such as beef, pork, chicken and turkey. Bacteriocins can kill bacteria through a range of mechanisms. They are broadly divided into those that function at the bacterial cell envelope and those that function inside. An example of this is niacin, which targets and binds lipid 2. This is a key intermediate in peptidoglycan synthesis, thus inhibiting the production of peptidoglycan. This is a problem for both gram-positive and gram-negative bacteria, as peptidoglycan is a key component of both of their cell envelopes.
So these have the potential to reduce the problem, but for now it's up to us to take antibiotics responsibly.
Please don't end up paying the price. Always take your doctor's advice.